The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the small apartment on Maple Street, each drop echoing the desperation that filled the cramped living room. Amelia Grace sat on the threadbare couch, her 19-year-old hands trembling as she stared at the legal documents spread across the coffee table. The papers might as well have been written in a foreign language, but she understood enough to know they would change her life forever. Uncle Robert paced behind her, his weathered face pale with shame and fear. The smell of cheap whiskey clung to his clothes like a second skin, and his bloodshot eyes avoided meeting hers. 3 months ago, he had been just another struggling mechanic trying to make ends meet. Now he owed Nathan Cross, one of the most powerful men in the city, more money than he could earn in 10 lifetimes. "I never meant for it to go this far, sweetheart," Robert muttered, running his fingers through his thinning hair. "I thought just one good hand would fix everything. Just one win to get us out of this mess." Amelia closed her eyes, remembering the night her parents died in that terrible car accident 3 years ago. Robert had taken her in without question, giving her a roof over her head when she had nowhere else to go. He worked double shifts at the garage, sacrificing his own comfort to keep her fed and clothed. But the bills kept piling up, and the weight of responsibility had driven him to make desperate choices. The gambling had started small, $20 here, $50 there. But desperation had a way of multiplying bad decisions, and soon Robert was betting money he didn't have on poker games. He couldn't win. When the local loan sharks turned violent, he had sought help from someone even more dangerous. Nathan Cross didn't just lend money, he collected debts in ways that destroyed lives completely. "The alternative is worse," Robert whispered, his voice breaking. "If you don't agree to this arrangement, he'll take the house, my business, everything. And then he'll come for what's left of us." Amelia picked up the photograph that had been included with the contract. Nathan Cross stared back at her with steel gray eyes that seemed to see right through the camera. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. His expression revealed nothing of the man beneath the expensive facade. At 32, he had built a technology empire that spanned 3 continents. His company developed security software that protected governments and corporations from cyber threats. But his personal life remained a mystery, hidden behind layers of privacy and speculation. The tabloids called him ruthless, calculating, heartless. Amelia said quietly, reading the terms again, "I marry him for 1 year, and you're free of all debts." Robert nodded miserably. He was very specific about the arrangement. A legal marriage, but nothing more. He'll live in his penthouse, attend social functions as his wife, but he won't force anything else upon you. The words should have been comforting, but they only made Amelia feel more like a business transaction. She was 19 years old, had never been kissed, never been on a proper date. Her dreams of college and independence were about to be traded away for her uncle's mistakes. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Robert's face went white as he peered through the peephole. "They're here." 2 men in expensive suits entered the apartment, their presence immediately making the small space feel even more cramped. The first was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that seemed out of place given his intimidating frame. The second was older, carrying himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to giving orders. "Miss Grace," the older man said, removing his hat politely. "I'm James, Mr. Cross's driver and assistant. This is my colleague Marcus. We're here to finalize the arrangements." James approached the coffee table with the respectful distance of someone who understood he was witnessing a life-changing moment. He placed a small velvet box beside the legal documents, along with a sealed envelope bearing her name in elegant handwriting. "Mr. Cross wanted you to have these before making your final decision," James explained gently. "He also wanted me to tell you that if you choose to decline, no harm will come to you or your uncle. He'll find another way to settle the debt." Amelia opened the velvet box with shaking fingers. Inside lay a wedding ring, unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't gaudy or ostentatious. Instead, it was a simple platinum band with a single diamond that caught the light like captured starfire. The setting was vintage, elegant, the kind of ring that told stories of enduring love. The envelope contained a handwritten letter on cream-colored paper that felt expensive beneath her fingertips. She read, silently, "I understand that circumstances have brought us to this unusual arrangement. I want you to know that your comfort and dignity will be my highest priority. This marriage may be born of necessity, but I promise you will be treated with nothing but respect. You are not a possession to be owned, but a person deserving of kindness. If you agree to this arrangement, I will do everything in my power to make this year as comfortable as possible for you. The choice, however, is entirely yours." Nathan Krauss Amelia stared at the letter, reading it twice more.
The handwriting was strong but careful, each word chosen with precision.
There was something almost gentle about the tone, which contradicted everything she had heard about the ruthless billionaire. "He wrote this himself," James said, noticing her surprise. "Mr. Cross doesn't dictate personal correspondence to assistants." "What kind of man is he really?" Amelia asked, surprising herself with the question. James considered his words carefully. "He's a man who has been hurt deeply and learned to protect himself by keeping others at a distance. But beneath that armor, he's one of the most honorable people I've ever known. He won't lie to you, Miss Grace. If he says you'll be safe and respected, you will be." Marcus stepped forward, his voice softer than his appearance suggested. "The wedding is arranged for tomorrow afternoon at the courthouse. Small ceremony, no media, no spectacle. Just the legal requirements and 2 witnesses." Amelia looked at her uncle, who stood frozen by the window. His shoulders were hunched with shame, but she could see the desperate hope in his eyes. Robert had given her a home when she had nothing. He had worked himself to exhaustion to provide for her, and his gambling addiction was born of desperation, not greed. She thought about her parents, about the dreams they had for her future. They would want her to be happy, to be free to choose her own path. But they would also want her to be loyal to family, to protect those who had protected her. "If I agree," she said slowly, "what exactly would be expected of me?" James opened a leather folder and retrieved another document. "You would move into Mr. Cross's penthouse tomorrow after the ceremony. You'll have your own suite of rooms, complete privacy when you desire it. There will be social events to attend, business, dinners where you'll need to play the role of his wife. But your time during the day is your own. Mr. Cross has arranged for you to continue your education if you wish, or pursue whatever interests you have, and after the year ends, you'll receive a settlement that will ensure you never have to worry about money again. You'll be free to go wherever you want, do whatever you choose with your life." Amelia picked up the pen with a hand that had stopped trembling. The weight of the decision pressed down on her shoulders, but beneath the fear she felt something else. A strange sense of curiosity about the man who had written such a thoughtful letter, who had chosen such a beautiful ring, who promised respect when he could have demanded submission. "Will I be able to see my uncle?" she asked. "Of course," James replied immediately. "Mr. Cross has no desire to separate you from your family." Amelia signed her name at the bottom of the contract, each letter sealing her fate. As the ink dried, she felt like she was stepping off a cliff into darkness. Not knowing where she would land, James collected the papers with professional efficiency, but his eyes held a warmth that suggested he understood the magnitude of what she had just agreed to. "A car will pick you up tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Mrs. Helena, Mr. Cross's housekeeper, has selected some appropriate clothing for you. She thought you might prefer to choose your own wedding dress from the options she's found." After the men left, Amelia sat in the silence of the apartment, the ring box still clutched in her hand. Uncle Robert sat beside her on the couch, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he whispered. "I've ruined everything." Amelia leaned against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of motor oil and aftershave that had comforted her through 3 years of grief and uncertainty. "You saved me when I had nowhere to go. Now it's my turn to save you." That night, Amelia lay awake staring at the ceiling, the ring sitting on her nightstand like a small promise in the darkness. Tomorrow she would marry a stranger, a man with a reputation for ruthlessness and a heart supposedly made of ice. But his letter suggested something different, something hidden beneath the cold exterior that the world saw. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Amelia Grace prepared to become someone entirely new. She had no idea that the man she was about to marry had spent the entire night awake as well. staring out at the same sunrise and wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or if he was finally about to find something he had been searching for without even knowing it. The courthouse ceremony was nothing like the weddings Amelia had dreamed about. As a little girl, there were no flowers, no music, no family gathered to witness the beginning of her new life. Instead, she found herself standing in a sterile room with fluorescent lighting, his presence commanding even in the mundane setting. When she had first seen him that morning, Amelia had been struck by how different he was in person. The photographs hadn't captured the subtle lines around his eyes that spoke of laughter, or the way his shoulders carried tension like invisible armor. "Do you, Nathan Cross, take Amelia Grace to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the judge intoned, his voice echoing slightly in the small chamber. "I do," Nathan replied, his voice steady and clear. When he turned to look at her, Amelia saw something in his gray eyes that she hadn't expected: gentleness. "Do you, Amelia Grace, take Nathan Cross to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Amelia's voice caught in her throat for a moment. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but Nathan's calm presence beside her was strangely reassuring. "I do." When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan didn't immediately reach for her. Instead, he waited, giving her the choice. Amelia stepped closer, and he placed his hands gently on her shoulders, leaning down to press a soft kiss to her forehead. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that tears sprang to her eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. The ride to his penthouse was filled with comfortable silence. Nathan sat across from her in the back of the luxury car, occasionally glancing out the window at the city passing by. James drove with practiced skill through the afternoon traffic, and Amelia found herself studying her new husband's profile. "Are you nervous?" Nathan asked suddenly, noticing her scrutiny. Amelia considered lying, but something about his direct gaze encouraged honesty. "Terrified," she admitted. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "So am I." The admission surprised her. This was Nathan Cross, a man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals. Without breaking a sweat, the idea that he might be nervous about anything seemed impossible, really. She asked. "I've never been married before," he said simply. "I have no idea what I'm doing." The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower that pierced the city's skyline like a crystal needle. As the elevator rose silently toward their destination, Amelia felt her ears pop from the altitude. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that took her breath away. Floor 2 ceiling windows wrapped around the entire living area, offering a panoramic view of the city that stretched to the horizon in every direction. The furniture was modern but comfortable, all clean lines and neutral colors that somehow felt warm rather than cold. Fresh flowers filled several vases, their fragrance adding life to the sophisticated space. "Mrs. Helena has prepared the guest suite for you," Nathan said, leading her down a hallway lined with original artwork. "But if you're not comfortable with the arrangements, we can change anything you'd like." He opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom decorated in soft blues and creams. A sitting area by the windows included a comfortable reading chair and a small desk. The bed was piled high with fluffy pillows and covered in linens that looked like they cost more than Amelia's entire wardrobe. "There's a private bathroom through there," Nathan continued, pointing to another door, "and a walk-in closet. Mrs. Helena took the liberty of stocking it with some basics, but tomorrow we can go shopping for anything else you need." Amelia walked to the windows, looking down at the city far below. People moved like ants along the sidewalks, their lives continuing while hers had just taken a dramatic turn. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "I'm glad you like it." Nathan hesitated. In the doorway, as if unsure whether he was welcome in the space he had designated as hers, "I should let you get settled. Mrs. Helena has prepared dinner for 7 o'clock. But if you're not hungry, or if you'd prefer to eat alone, ... I'd like to have dinner with you," Amelia said, turning to face him. "If that's all right." Relief flickered across his features. "I'd like that too." After he left, Amelia explored her new quarters with growing amazement. The bathroom was larger than her bedroom at Uncle Robert's apartment, with a soaking tub that overlooked the city and a shower with enough settings to rival a spa. The closet contained an array of clothing in her exact size. Everything from casual wear to elegant evening gowns. Mrs. Helena knocked softly on the door an hour later, entering. With a warm smile and a tea service on a silver tray, she was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back, in an elegant chignon, and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and kindness. "I thought you might like some chamomile tea," she said, setting the tray on the small table by the windows. "It's quite soothing after a big day." "Thank you," Amelia said gratefully. "Mrs. Helena, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear. What's he really like? Nathan, I mean." "Everyone says he's cold and ruthless, but he seems different," Mrs. Helena finished with a knowing smile. "Mr. Cross has had to build walls around himself, dear. When you're as successful as he is, people often want things from you. They see the money and the power, not the man underneath. But I've worked for him for 8 years, and I can tell you that he's one of the most generous and thoughtful people I've ever known." She poured the tea with practiced grace, the fragrant steam rising between them. "He pays for the college education of every employee's child who wants to attend. He's built schools in 3 countries and funds medical research that doesn't make him a penny. But he does it all quietly, without publicity or recognition." "Then why do people think he's heartless?" Mrs. Helena sighed. "Because he's learned to be careful with his trust. He was betrayed very badly once, by someone he loved deeply. Since then, he's kept people at a distance to protect himself." Amelia sipped her tea thoughtfully. "What happened?" "That's his story. To tell if he chooses to," Mrs. Helena said gently. "But I will say this. I've never seen him take such care with anyone as he has with you. The ring he chose, the letter he wrote, the way he's prepared everything for your comfort. He may be protecting his heart, but he's already showing you pieces of it." Dinner was served in a smaller dining room that felt more intimate than the grand formal space they passed on the way. Nathan had changed into dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds. He stood when she entered, pulling out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy. "You look lovely," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks warm. The meal was delicious. Grilled salmon with herbs from the rooftop garden, roasted vegetables that melted in her mouth, and a chocolate dessert that was pure decadence. But more than the food, Amelia found herself enchanted by the conversation. Nathan asked about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite books and movies. He listened with genuine interest as she talked about her parents, about the small moments. That had made her happy before tragedy changed everything. In return, he shared stories of building his company from nothing, of the satisfaction he found in solving complex problems, of his love for old movies and jazz music. "I never expected you to be so, ... double quotes." Amelia paused, searching for the right word. "Human," Nathan suggested with a self-deprecating smile. "Normal," she finished, then blushed. "I mean, not normal exactly, but approachable. Real." "The person the media writes about isn't really me," Nathan said quietly. "That's just the armor I wear to protect what's underneath." After dinner, he showed her his study, a warm room lined with books and filled with comfortable furniture. A chess set sat on a small table by the windows, the pieces carved from what looked like ivory and ebony. "Do you play?" he asked, noticing her interest. "My father taught me," Amelia said, touching one of the pieces gently. "We used to play every Sunday afternoon. Would you like a game?" They settled into chairs on opposite sides of the table, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. As they played, Amelia found herself relaxing completely for the first time in years. Nathan was a skilled player, but he didn't overwhelm her with complicated strategies. Instead, he seemed to enjoy the simple pleasure of the game itself. "Checkmate," Amelia said finally. Moving her queen into position with a satisfied smile, Nathan studied the board with genuine admiration. "That was beautifully played. Your father taught you well. He always said chess was like life you have, to think several moves ahead, but you also have to be willing to adapt when circumstances change." "Wise man," Nathan said softly. "I would have liked to meet him." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Amelia found herself looking into Nathan's eyes, seeing past the careful control to the loneliness that lived beneath. For a moment, she forgot that this was an arrangement, a business transaction. She saw only a man who had been hurt and had learned to protect himself, reaching out tentatively toward connection. "Nathan," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. He stood abruptly, the spell broken. "It's getting late. You should rest," of course, Amelia said, disappointment flooding through her. For a moment, she had thought she glimpsed something real between them. He walked her to her door, maintaining careful distance. "Thank you for dinner, for the chess game."
What?
"It was... nice," she finished, when he trailed off. "Yes, nice." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good night, Amelia." As she prepared for bed in her luxurious new surroundings, Amelia found herself thinking about the contradictions of her new husband. He was powerful but gentle, controlled but vulnerable, distant but capable of surprising kindness. She had married him expecting coldness and calculation, but instead found herself drawn to the warmth he tried so hard to hide. Outside her windows, the city sparkled with endless possibilities, and for the first time since agreeing to this arrangement, Amelia felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. This marriage might have begun as a business transaction, but perhaps it could become something more. Perhaps they could both find what they had been missing, even if neither of them was brave enough to admit what that might be. 3 months into their marriage, Amelia had settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Her days were filled with the kind of freedom she had never experienced before: art classes at the local museum, volunteer work at a literacy center, long afternoons reading in the penthouse's sun-drenched library. But it was the evenings she looked forward to most, when Nathan would return from his office and they would share dinner, conversation, and the comfortable silence that had grown between them. The man she had married was nothing like the cold Tycoon the world believed him to be. Nathan was thoughtful and funny, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard at the most unexpected moments. He remembered that she liked her coffee with cream but no sugar, that she hummed when she was happy, that thunderstorms made her nervous. In return, she learned that he worked too much because silence made him restless, that he donated anonymously to dozens of charities, and that he played piano when he thought no one could hear. It was the piano that finally broke through the last of her reservations. Amelia had been returning from her evening walk when she heard the music drifting from the penthouse. She rode the elevator up in silence, then stood in the foyer listening to the haunting melody that filled the space. Following the sound, she found Nathan at the grand piano in the living room, his fingers moving across the keys with surprising grace. He didn't notice her at first, lost in the music that seemed to pour directly from his soul. The piece was melancholy and beautiful, full of longing and barely contained emotion. When he finally looked up and saw her standing there, his hands stilled on the keys. "I'm sorry," he said, starting to rise. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "Please don't stop," Amelia said quickly, moving closer. "It's beautiful. What is it?" "Something I wrote," he admitted, his cheeks coloring slightly. "I compose sometimes when I can't sleep." "You wrote that?" Amelia sat on the bench beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Nathan, it's incredible. How long have you been composing?" "Since I was a teenager in foster care," he said quietly. "God, there was this old piano in one of the group homes, completely out of tune, but it was the only thing that made the place feel less lonely." He began to play again, this time a lighter piece that spoke of hope and new beginnings. Amelia watched his hands move across the keys, marveling at this hidden facet of the man she had married. When the last notes faded into silence, she found herself leaning closer, drawn by an invisible force she didn't quite understand. "Why do you hide this?" she whispered. "It's this beautiful part of yourself." Nathan turned to look at her, and for the first time since their wedding day, his careful control slipped completely. Because when you show people the things that matter most to you, they have the power to destroy them. The pain in his voice was so raw, so honest, that Amelia's heart clenched in response. Without thinking, she reached up to touch his cheek, her fingers tracing the line of tension there. Not everyone wants to destroy beautiful things, she said softly. Some of us just want to treasure them. Something shifted in Nathan's eyes. A wall crumbling that had stood for years. He leaned into her touch, his hand coming up to cover hers where it rested against his face. Amelia, he breathed, her name like a prayer on his lips. The space between them disappeared as if it had never existed. When his lips touched hers, it was with a tenderness that made her heart race and her knees weak. The kiss was everything. Her first kiss should have been gentle, sweet, full of promise and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I didn't plan for this to happen, he whispered. Neither did I, Amelia admitted, but I'm glad it did. Over the following weeks, their relationship transformed from careful politeness to something deeper and more genuine. Nathan began sharing more of himself, his morning runs through the city, his passion for architecture, his secret dream of building schools in impoverished communities around the world. Amelia discovered that her brilliant, powerful husband was also surprisingly vulnerable, craving the kind of acceptance and understanding that had been missing from his life for too long. Their first real test came when Carolyn, Amelia's best friend from high school, returned from her study abroad program in France. She called Amelia on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice bubbling with excitement and curiosity about the mysterious marriage that had apparently been the talk of their hometown. You have to tell me everything, Carolyn demanded over lunch at a small cafe downtown. One day you're waiting tables at the diner, the next you're married to Nathan Cross. How did this even happen? Amelia had prepared for this conversation, but sitting across from her oldest friend, she found it harder than expected to maintain the fiction that it had been a whirlwind romance. It all happened very quickly, she said carefully. We met and there was this instant connection. ... Caroline studied her with the sharp eyes of someone who had known her since childhood. Amelia Grace, you are the worst liar in the history of the world. What really happened? Before Amelia could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Emergency at the office. Thomas is making his move. Maybe late tonight. The blood drained from Amelia's face as she read the message. Thomas Richardson was Nathan's primary business rival, a man who had been trying to destroy Nathan's company. For years, through a combination of corporate espionage and vicious personal attacks, Nathan had mentioned him only briefly, but she could tell from his tone that Thomas represented a real threat. What's wrong? Carolyn asked, noticing her expression. I have to go, Amelia said, standing abruptly. I'm sorry, but Nathan needs me. She left Caroline sitting at the cafe with more questions than answers, but all Amelia could think about was getting to Nathan. Over the past months, she had come to understand how much his company meant to him, not just as a source of wealth, but as proof that he could build something lasting and meaningful despite his difficult beginnings. The elevator to Nathan's office seemed to take forever, and when she finally reached the executive floor, she could hear raised voices coming from behind his closed door. She knocked once, then entered without waiting for permission. Nathan stood behind his desk, his face dark, with controlled fury as he faced a man she recognized from newspaper photos as Thomas Richardson. Thomas was tall and silver-haired, with the kind of aristocratic bearing that came from generations of inherited wealth. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. Ah, Thomas said, turning to look at Amelia with calculating eyes. This must be the lovely bride. Tell me, my dear, what did Nathan offer you to agree to this little charade? Money? Security? Or perhaps he simply threatens someone you care about? That's enough, Nathan said sharply, moving to stand protectively in front of Amelia. Get out of my office, Thomas. Not until I get what I came for, Thomas replied smoothly. See, I have documentation proving that your marriage is nothing more than a business arrangement. A fake marriage to improve your public image and gain access to certain social circles that have been closed to you. Amelia's heart sank as she realized the truth of what Thomas was threatening. If he exposed the real nature of their marriage, it would not only destroy Nathan's reputation, but could also invalidate the legal protection it provided to Uncle Robert. You have no proof of anything, Nathan said coldly. don't I? Thomas produced a manila folder from his briefcase. Financial records showing the payment of Robert Carter's gambling debts. Witness statements from people who saw the negotiations, even a copy of the original contract your people drew up. Thomas turned his attention back to Amelia. Did you really think you could play in this league, little girl? You're nothing but a pawn in a game much bigger than you understand. That's when something inside Amelia snapped. She had spent the first 19 years of her life being overlooked and underestimated, treated like she didn't matter. But she wasn't that helpless girl anymore. You're right, she said, stepping forward with a calm that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. I was a pawn when this all started. Scared teenager who agreed to an arrangement because I didn't see any other choice. Thomas's smile widened, thinking he had one. But that's not what I am anymore, Amelia continued, her voice growing stronger. With each word, I'm Nathan Cross's wife, and I love him with everything I have. Yes, this marriage started as a business arrangement, but it became something real, something worth fighting for. She turned to look at Nathan, letting him see everything. She felt reflected in her eyes. I love your brilliant mind and your generous heart. I love the way you play piano when you think no one is listening, and how you remember every small thing that makes me happy. I love that you've spent your life building something meaningful while hiding your kindness from a world that would take advantage of it. Nathan's face transformed as he realized what she was saying. Hope and joy and wonder, all warring for dominance in his expression. So here's what's going to happen, Amelia said, turning back to Thomas with steel in her voice. You're going to take your threats and your documentation and leave. Because even if you expose how this marriage began, you can't change what it's become. And what it's become is real love between two people who found each other against all odds. Thomas's confident smile faltered as he realized that his weapons had been turned against him. A love story would only make Nathan more sympathetic to the public, not less. This isn't over, he said, but the threat lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Nathan said quietly, his arms sliding around Amelia's waist. Because I have something now that you'll never understand. I have someone who chose me not for what I could give her, but for who I really am. After Thomas left, Nathan pulled Amelia into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear at any moment. Did you mean it? He whispered against her hair. Do you really love me? More than I ever thought possible, she whispered back. I love you, Nathan Cross. All of you. The brilliant businessman, the generous philanthropist, the gentle man who plays me piano pieces in the moonlight. I love you too, he said, the words like a vow. I never believed I would find you. But somehow you've made me believe in forever again. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they stood together. In his office, holding each other and marveling at the journey that had brought them from a desperate arrangement to genuine love. Outside, the world continued to spin, but inside that room, two hearts had finally found their home. Their marriage had begun with a contract and a stranger's signature, but it had become something neither of them had dared to dream of, a love. A story that would last forever, built on foundation of trust, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. And as Nathan kissed his wife with all the passion and tenderness he had kept locked away for so long, Amelia knew that sometimes the most beautiful love stories began with the most unexpected chapters.